House.
So that is House Speaker Kevin McCarthy there at the New York Stock Exchange making some comments, and Nikole Killion is with us on Capitol Hill. Nicole, I don't know if you were able to listen in on Speaker McCarthy's comments. You heard him talking about reining in spending, and certainly that is true. I think you would find both Democrats and Republicans agree to that. He's specifically pointing out the Biden administration, but we saw spending increase, of course, during the Trump administration and every other presidential administration, except probably if you have to go back to Bill Clinton. My history is a little rusty here. But we've heard this refrain from politicians. Typically, when their side's not in power, they point to the other side and say, they're the reasons why spending is increasing and we're trying to buckle it down.
Yeah, and, you know, the White House did issue a pre-buttal ahead of McCarthy's speech today, basically saying a speech is not a plan, and also pointing to the fact that the debt ceiling was raised, 3 times under Republicans during the Trump administration. So from that standpoint, that's why they continue to argue that there should be this clean up or down vote, and they feel that any discussions with respect to reining in spending and on fiscal matters should be held separately. But that being said, both sides can't continue to talk past each other. We are facing a real deadline this summer. We're already at the end of April. So again, this is certainly the Speaker's attempt to try to move the ball forward, and we'll have to see how congressional Democrats and the White House respond. We do know that Leader Schumer is expected to respond, at least on the part of congressional Democrats, later this afternoon in a press conference.
Let me ask you about this. We have a couple of senators returning to work. Democratic Senator John Fetterman, he's returning to the Senate today for the first time since he was hospitalized for clinical depression. And then Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is also returning after he had a bit of a fall. What can we expect to see from them today and in the coming weeks?
Yeah, that's right. And Leader McConnell was briefly up here on the Hill on Friday wearing his jeans, so no official duties, but just stopping in. But look, for both of these senators, they have been out for a number of weeks. It will be a big week for Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman. He'll actually be chairing his first subcommittee hearing since his return. That will be on Wednesday. A couple of days ago last week, when the Senate was out on recess, he met with constituents, particularly in western Pennsylvania, some farmers who had been impacted by the train derailment in East Palestine. And even when he was seeking treatment at Walter Reed, when there were those hearings on Capitol Hill with Norfolk Southern, he did participate in those remotely by sending in a statement and questions. So he has tried to remain engaged. We know his staff was briefing him in that interim during his recovery, but we also know it was a very difficult period for him. He sat down with CBS Sunday Morning and talked about not even wanting to get out of bed at times. So it will be interesting to see how he deals with his workload as he returns. His colleagues certainly look forward to welcoming him back. Same with Leader McConnell, who has been out for a number of weeks after suffering a fall. I'm told he's kind of anxious to get back to work, is expected to lead his weekly news conference tomorrow. So both of them kind of anxious to kind of get back into the swing of things here on Capitol Hill.
Nicole, let me ask you about Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who is seeking to temporarily replace Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein with another Democrat on the Judiciary Committee while she recovers from shingles. This is a problem because not that he's looking to replace her, but the fact that she has not been able to be there and conduct Senate business.
She's been out since February.
She's been out since February, and there are a number of judges that are awaiting confirmation from the Senate. Nicole, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but for our viewers. So there's that question about the Judiciary Committee, but the larger question about whether Senator Feinstein is even able to carry out her responsibilities as a United States Senator. There have been a lot of people that have pointed out, for example, shades of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who at the end of her life, some people say should have probably stepped down, even though they're appointed the lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. And because she didn't at the appropriate time, things went awry, as we now know in SCOTUS, at least if you believe the Democrats. So what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, that's right. And certainly important to note that she will not be returning to the Senate this week. There was anticipation because she had been out for a while that maybe she too would be returning, but her office made clear last week that would not be happening. And of course, then that was followed by a number of calls for her to resign and step aside. And some have argued that those calls are sexist and ageist, considering in the case of Leader McConnell and Senator Fetterman, who was out even longer than Senator Feinstein. Some of those calls weren't made, although certainly in social media they were not necessarily by fellow lawmakers. But, there certainly was some chatter around whether or not he might step down. But that being said, in Senator Feinstein's case, she has made clear that she is trying to work through this diagnosis of shingles and that she does want to return when she is cleared by her medical team to travel and be here on Capitol Hill. We know she's been spending a lot of time in her home state of California, but it has presented a conundrum for Senate Democrats in terms of confirming these nominees, and it will unlikely be a very easy process to try to have a replacement for her. This is usually something that we see when a lawmaker passes or when someone resigns. But in this case, this is simply a temporary replacement, almost unprecedented, although the process works much like it normally does at the start of each Congress, where we see there have to be discussions between Democrats and Republicans on who should be on committees. And then a resolution is put forth. But the question is, if and when that resolution is put forth with a replacement, will Republicans challenge it? And there have been some rumblings, and even Senator Tom Cotton has suggested, they're not necessarily going to rubber stamp a pick. So this is going to require discussions between the parties, and whether or not this is an easy process or protracted process certainly remains to be seen. But if it is protracted, then that could put more attention on Senator Feinstein's situation and perhaps even force her to make a decision sooner rather than later if this can't be resolved.
All right, Nicole, thank you very much.